Peter Harris, a professor of political science at Colorado State University. Peter, thank you so much indeed for your time. I mean, obviously, we've got two concurrent thrusts almost. We've got the military action and we've got the diplomacy, and we've got Volodymyr Zelensky really driving his nation forward, almost setting the agenda for the West. But is there going to be a diplomatic solution here, or is it going to go all the way towards a military conclusion?
Well, ultimately, there will have to be a diplomatic solution to the conflict. All wars end. At some point, the guns stop shooting. Wars end when both sides agree that they can no longer achieve what they want to achieve politically through fighting. It's not clear right now when that moment will arrive. It could take days, weeks, months. We hope not years. But at some point, the war will end and a diplomatic solution will be found.
Do you think dissenting voices, local voices in Russia make any difference to the Kremlin? And I'm thinking here more of those hundreds of Western businesses who over the past couple of weeks have suspended their operations in Russia. I mean, it's going to become more and more difficult for people in Russia to be able to live the sort of lives they used to live, and certainly leaving Russia will become even more complicated.
I think it matters. I think the Russian people are dealing with a great deal of inconvenience at the moment and serious economic pain to come. But Russia is not a democracy. Vladimir Putin doesn't have to worry about the next election the same way that democratic leaders do. I think over the long term, if the economic situation in Russia deteriorates seriously, it could pose a threat to the Putin regime. But Putin will be gambling that he can achieve a military victory on the battlefield within days or weeks, which is not long enough for the economic situation to become so bad that it causes him serious trouble at home. And if he can achieve a military victory in Ukraine, then he feels that he will be able to impose a peace upon Zelensky, or perhaps a replacement leader in Ukraine, before the situation in Russia deteriorates to the point where it becomes unsustainable for him.
And what about eventual accountability here? I mean, one could think of the war in Syria, which is well beyond its 10-year mark now, in its 11th year, I believe. And we got Bashar al-Assad, the leader of the regime there, who incidentally is, of course, propped up by Vladimir Putin, and no accountability for Assad. I mean, Boris Johnson has accused the Russians of using cluster munitions. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, just two organizations that they say they also have evidence of cluster munitions being used. So any possibility of eventual accountability, do you think?
I think there's no doubt that war crimes have been committed. The crime of aggression is a crime against international law, and Putin very clearly has committed the crime of aggression. I would say that there's close to zero chance, though, of Putin and his closest associates facing justice for those crimes. We have to consider what would have to happen for that course of events to play out. First of all, you would have to see regime change in Russia, which looks desperately unlikely at the moment. As much as it may seem difficult for outsiders to understand, Putin's pretty popular in Russia. He doesn't need to be popular because he's a dictator, but he is popular. So it's very unlikely that a regime change would take place in Russia anytime soon. And if it did, at some point in the future, Putin steps down from being president, we would need the successor government to agree to hand over Putin and others in the current regime to face some kind of international war crimes tribunal. And there's nothing to suggest that the leader that will replace Vladimir Putin will want to see a former Russian president put on trial in such a fashion. So I think as much as it may cause people anguish outside of Russia, it's desperately unlikely that Putin or anybody else in Russia will face trial for the crimes committed in Ukraine.
Peter, thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate your time. Peter Harris from Colorado State University.